Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Accessibility London 35. Thanks for taking the time out to join us. I really appreciate it. So we do have live captions available today. So you can access these through Zoom, or they're also available on the Stream Text website. We've dropped the links into the chat, and I think Harriet is also going to hopefully drop them in again for us, just in case they get pushed off the top of the chat. So there's two ways to view those. Like I say, either through Zoom or through the Stream Text website, whichever is your preference. Please do introduce yourself in the chat, say hello, let us know where you are in the world, where you're joining us from. Let us know, what your job role is, or whether you're studying or looking for work. And, if you're working in accessibility or you're looking to get into the sector. But yeah, just let us know about a little bit about you if you like. If you want to ask questions today, we've got the Q&A function set up in Zoom, so you can ask questions directly through there. You can also upvote questions. So if somebody asks a question and you have the same question, you can upvote it. You can also add comments to the questions as well. So please do make use of that. We'll be doing our best to answer the questions at the end. Any that we don't have time for, we'll try and take those offline for after the webinar. So if you want to find out a little bit more about Accessibility London, probably the place where we're most active is on Twitter. So you can find us at A11Y London on Twitter. If you're not familiar with the phrase, A11Y is a short way of saying accessibility. So it's the A and the Y, the first and the last character of accessibility, and then the 11 characters in between. So it's kind of a shortened way of saying accessibility. So it's either pronounced A11Y, or sometimes people say Ali for short. You can also find us on YouTube as well. So we've got lots of great content on there from previous events. If you just go onto YouTube and search for Accessibility London, you'll find our channel. And there's sort of approaching 50 videos on there now from previous events. I want to do a real big thank you today to Harriet from eSynergy Solutions. First of all, for contacting me to arrange this event, but also more importantly, for agreeing to sponsor the live captions for today. So, really grateful for that. Their support has allowed us to provide the live captions for today. So thank you very much, Harriet and eSynergy Solutions. You can find them at esynergy-solutions.co.uk. So, please check them out. They're doing some really great work. And then our speakers today. So we have Fraser and Janos from NewDay. I'm really grateful that they're joining us today to tell us a little bit about NewDay, what they do as a company, and also their accessibility journey that they're on. So Fraser is the head of front-end development at NewDay, and Janos is a senior front-end developer. You can check them out at newday.co.uk. And then thank you to Tara from MyClearText. So the captions that you see today are being generated by a person. These are not software-based captions. So Tara is our live captioner today from MyClearText. Please check them out at mycleartext.com. They provide a really great, human-powered captioning service. And then the event is also being recorded today. So we have a company called Meetup Video who are recording the event for us. You can find them at meetupvideo.com. Again, they provide a really great service for recording your events. When we were in person, they used to bring down all the gear, all the cameras and film it for us and run a live stream. A little bit different now, we're all online, but if you need recording services, definitely check them out because they provide a really great service. Okay, so I think that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Fraser to begin with, who's going to do a quick intro to NewDay and set the scene for Janos's talk. So over to you, Fraser.
Wonderful, thank you very much, Andy. So hello everybody, my name is Fraser Hart. I'm going to give you a very quick introduction to who I am and who NewDay is and some of the stuff about how we work and what we do. So like I say, my name is Fraser Hart. I head up front-end development at NewDay, and my role here is to basically lead the direction of the technologies that we use in the front-end space, define and ensure that we're all aligned on standards, processes and technologies, and to also manage our 14-strong, very talented front-end development team. A little bit of background about me. So I've been working with web technologies since the late 1990s. Started off as a lot of people did back then, writing HTML and Notepad. And then I was actually on a university course and I dropped out of university It wasn't quite aligned for me, and then I ended up getting a junior development job. I was very lucky to find my feet in there, where I basically spent a couple of years slicing up designs in ImageReady, which is a precursor to Photoshop that some of you may have used before, to basically export HTML and inline styling of the time to give to the proper developers to actually do some proper development work on the stuff that I was outputting. And since that time, I've worked in all manner of industries. I've worked for travel corporations, I've worked for small design agencies, some online gambling companies, international banks, and finally here at NewDay is where my career has currently brought me to. So a little bit about NewDay. NewDay is a consumer credit organisation. We provide our own brand of credit cards, and these are Aqua, Marbles, Fluid, and Opus. We also provide credit card products for a number of third-party retailers, and the ones that we really like to shout about are the ones that everyone's heard of. So we provide credit solutions for Amazon, Topshop, Topman, Debenhams, TUI Travel as well. In total, we have around 20 partners who we provide credit solutions for. So ultimately, if you take out a credit card with Amazon, for instance, you'll get a NewDay credit card with an Amazon logo on it, or the name of whatever the business is that you've taken out that credit product with. So in total, we've over 5 million customers. We're responsible for around 5% of the UK credit market. So while there's a very good chance that you won't have heard of NewDay, there's a chance that you might have come across some of our products out in the wild, whether that's our own credit card brandings or some of those of some of our partners. So as a business, NewDay is almost 20 years old. And in 2017, we began to in-house and expand our digital team. And today, digital at NewDay currently consists of around 90 team members, and that covers development, QA, product, and other supporting roles. So you can see we've had quite a ramp up in a relatively short period of time, and we're still growing. And incidentally, we're also hiring a number of positions across digital in all areas of software development and for every level of experience as well. So if anybody is looking for a role at the moment, feel free to reach out to me after this talk, and we can have a conversation about any of our available roles. We have great to have a conversation there. So like I say, digital's only been around since around 2017, so we're relatively early in our digital journey. So we're very lucky as a company not to have a heap of legacy to deal with on a day-to-day basis. This really gives us a lot of benefits. We're able to move fast and work with a lot of the latest technologies. So to give you an idea of some of the stuff we are working with, we're heavily invested with React and .NET Core, Microsoft Azure, a number of other cool tools and languages and frameworks. And we're looking at experimenting things with like GraphQL and GitHub Actions. Am I still on?
Yeah, we can still see you, Fraser.
Oh, okay, apologies. Yeah, my screen just disappeared there. I wasn't sure if I was still talking. So yeah, apologies for that. Let me just snap back to where I was a second ago. Apologies. Cool. Yeah. So, and like I say, we're relatively early on in our career at NewDay in digital, but we've built and accomplished a lot over the last few years, and we're really looking at the moment to solidify our development practices, tools, and processes. We see a huge benefit in cross-industry knowledge sharing. We really value the opinions and insights of our peers as we build and improve. And as an organisation, we benefit massively from open source and community efforts. We really want to be involved in that and do our bit to give back to that community as well. So that's basically why we're here today and why we're putting on these events. And we're going to be doing more of these going forward as well. And along with that, one of the areas we're really starting to put an increased focus on right now is accessibility. Having so many customers, it's really vital to us to make sure that our products are accessible to every single one of them. We see it as a bit of a failure, to be honest. If we have a single person that's unable to use the products they've signed up for, then that is an atrocity effectively. So we have to really start to make good inroads on there. And as part of this journey, we've really brought on some great new development talent like Yanis, who you're about to hear from, who's really instrumental in guiding us on this journey. So I think that's a really good opportunity now to hand over to Yanis, who's got a fantastic presentation for everyone. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Janusz Kaliszczak. I work as a senior front-end engineer in NewDay. My background is pretty similar to Fraser's. Started in roughly 1999, 2000 at the uni. Also dropped out at some point, starting work in one of the biggest Polish news portals, compared usually at the time to as a Polish Yahoo. So it was like a big leap for me. And since then, I worked in different industries, also gambling as well, like probably most of web developers at last 2 decades, but also which made me more aware about the accessibility issues and usability was medical, pharmaceutical, government projects, and also e-commerce, where usability was very important. Accessibility was not always something that people thought about a couple of maybe 10 years ago, but it's growing in all other industries as well. So today I'm going to talk about accessibility, not from technical perspective. We will go through some common technical things, because this is everywhere. This knowledge can be acquired very quickly. But my main point here will be defining how to think about accessibility as a bigger part of the process, how to avoid the common mistakes, and how to fix most common problems. So when we think about accessibility, the first thing that comes to our mind is issues with visual, auditory, motor, speech, or any cognitive parts of how we interact with applications and websites. And usually think visually, someone can't see, someone is short-sighted, auditory is hearing issues, maybe someone can't hear anything at all. Motor, we think about maybe older people that struggle with precision using mouse, and so on and so on. And speech, probably in my case as a foreigner, interacting with Siri at the beginning was difficult for me. So it's not only someone that can't use their voice at all. So the biggest change that we can make thinking about accessibility is thinking that it's not just a small group of people that sometimes we think that we don't have to care about because our product is not addressed to them, but actually it affects everyone, and we all experience some issues with applications and websites that we interact with. It can happen because we are in crowded bus. It can happen because we are in a very bright environment with using iPad that has very glossy screen, or we are in the middle of something else, eating, talking to someone else, or so. So we can think about any of those problems as either permanent, temporary, or situational. So here is the example of, for example, seeing is a person being blind, person having temporary problems. For example, me, one week ago, I had eye infection and I struggled using screens. I had to use from time to time, but it was very painful and I couldn't focus. So it's very good example. Also, situational, distracted driver, someone that can't use phone quietly. It's in a moving bus or something. Everything is shaky. They can't use their phone very close to. They can't put it close to their face. They experience exactly the same issues as people that we think about them thinking about accessibility. So from the business perspective, addressing those issues helps everyone, not only people that we might think that we don't have to care about at the moment. And it's about all of us. It's about also thinking what people may be doing while using our product. Good example is thinking about application that is used by teenagers, young people. Oh, they like using videos, they don't read, but maybe they can't listen to the video because they're watching something, they have to be quiet, they don't have earphones. Maybe they do something at school. It's maybe a very bad example, but we don't know what's happening, how they actually interact with the application that we built for them. So we can't assume anything. Another factor that we don't know, we know nothing about, is how our applications will be used in the nearest future. Technology changes very quickly. We have no idea how people will use our applications. I'm thinking right now about reading notifications on my Apple Watch. I'm thinking about nearest future where commonly we will use some applications on driving our cars, where we can't focus on the screen, where we can't really read messages. We are only relying on voice and whatever the application is trying to tell us. So everything is about inclusion. So if we think about addressing the biggest difficulties, we usually fix the problems of everyone. It's a good example of curb cut, when on this funny picture, someone is trying to convince a person to just clear stairs, but it would help only people being able to walk up those stairs. But clearing the ramp helps everyone. So it's just changing our mindset and thinking about how we can address more people. The same, probably a lot of you know already, the case with a pillar. The thick pillar was created for people that couldn't grab the stool properly, and thicker handle helped them. But suddenly everyone liked this kind of pillar. It's more useful for everyone. It's usually also nicer, and I can't see those on the left on shelves in shops right now. Everyone is using those. Another way of thinking is just idea how to remove any obstacles. Sometimes our applications are difficult because we put those fences, and they are not really necessary. If you think about sign-up process, where you have to put all your data, there's a lot of issues. It takes time. People might not be able to provide this data. They may feel anxious. Do I need to provide those additional data? It takes time for people that have issues with going through long forms. Just thinking, do I really need it? Is it really necessary to provide some service to get clients to our product? It usually helps a lot for everyone. We have more streamlined process. People get less anxious. People are willing to actually participate. They don't struggle with multiple fields, but just few. So this is still part of accessibility. So we know that we have to change our way of thinking, but there is also a lot of not only technical but process parts that can affect the overall accessibility. So is there anything that can fix the whole problem? It depends. There is no silver bullet. Everything of course is related to a specific product. E-commerce will be different. Government website will be different. Credit websites like ours will be completely different, and so on and so on. Usually it's dependent very on type of application, also type of our audience, but a little bit less, as you can see later. So for those of you that are not very familiar with technical parts, I'll just go through some basic things that we can provide from the very common step fixing accessibility. So thinking about markup and code. So that's what usually we are dealing with as front-end developers. The first fundamental thing is semantic markup, because if people use any aids like screen readers, those tools rely heavily of how the content on the page is structured. But if you start thinking about this, it's just a tool that tries to make sense from the markup. What is the meaning of the page? Which elements serve what purpose? And what is the structure of content? It's nothing different than how Google engine tries to place us in the ranking in search engine. And it's really easy to imagine a similar screen reader in your car, so you can digest any website driving your Tesla or whatever. This tool will work exactly the same, trying to make sense of the content. But simple semantic markup is usually not enough. So we have landmark roles that can help us add some meaning to elements that not necessarily are semantic from the very beginning. We can add ARIA attributes giving additional information. What is the button? If it is not technically a button, we can create a list from elements that are not list, and so on and so on. These are tools that we can easily use and provide some additional benefit for accessibility. Also, relations between elements, so someone who navigates using voice, keyboard can easily know which element is controlling what. Also, we need to think about what is the real purpose of element. Common mistake that people make is using buttons looking like links, links looking like buttons, just like that, without thinking that the way of interacting is different. Using link, it's easy to open stuff in a new tab, because this link is actually providing some URL that we can copy, that we can open in another browser, share, or whatever. Button doesn't work like this, but also, like I said, interaction is different. But I'm not gonna dive in this part too much. Most important, in my case, is starting accessibility with design. If you can imagine, how markup is created, it relies very heavily on how certain elements on the page are designed. So simple component, form component, media component with image, some text. If design is very difficult to implement, sometimes it's the easiest way to destroy the accessibility that comes from the markup, or just make it very hard to fix it later. So ideal situation is, and I was lucky to have the situation in currently in this company, but in a few previous ones, is working very closely with designers. So from the very basic concept, we think about how it's going to be implemented. Do we have everything there? Do we have the way to provide connection between elements? Do we have the way to provide additional content that can be digested in a different way, and so on and so on. But design is also content. So there are a few simple rules that I think it's not only about accessibility for applications and website, but if you think about reading any book, using any physical interface, the clearer everything is, the simpler, the better usually for the user. So the same principle should be essential for what we are doing. We have to think about good contrast, but this sometimes is a pitfall, because we just think about simple numbers. Is it passing the contrast test or not? But again, then we have to really think very hard about how this interface will be used. Because if we are very close to passing contrast, will it really work if environment is very bright and you're using a very glossy screen? What happens if a user is using phone late in the evening with dimmed screen, and other cases like that? Next is probably very trivial and well known, is thinking about color. So about 12% of men, if I remember correctly, it's just over 10, have trouble with seeing color. It's not only seeing in grayscale, but also not being able to distinguish certain colors. So we have to think about providing additional information. And usually it's very hard to, for some designers to go over this obstacle about thinking not only about aesthetics, but just providing all the necessary information. So good case, if you see those dots at the bottom, there were statuses in application, kind of similar on like if something is online or offline. The case on the left, green and gray statuses were showing if something is online. Green if something is online, gray if someone's offline. It's not very easy to distinguish, and even if I can perceive colors perfectly, small dots were very hard to spot at the first glance. Using something slightly different, either using just green dot for elements that are online, or using green dot and empty hollow dot, just a circle for offline elements, improved ability to scan quickly and spot elements that we need to spot in interface. So also adding icons, adding text, adding highlights usually helps to convey any information much better than just color. Progressive enhancement. We always try to think about interface as something that will be used exactly as we want. We think about ideal devices, and usually we overlook how elements will work if something won't be provided. If we build applications for native applications, it's probably easier. We can target specific devices. We can ask, but basically we can skip people that are using older devices or anything like this. But with websites, it's a little bit different, because we never know how it will actually work. And the very good idea is think about the basic look, basic behavior, and starting building up. So this example here is taken from one of the older versions of WordPress admin panel, where user can basically move elements, pages in hierarchy up and down. So very basic situation is that you can input numbers and submit the form, and it will reorder elements accordingly. Later, if we know that the browser can actually use proper styles, we're talking here about times where IE was not able to to render everything properly, or have rounded corners or so. But if we detected that the browser can actually use this, everything was rendered a little bit nicer. And if we had proper JavaScript, we could easily intercept everything, and instead of just displaying simple form elements, we could allow user to just drag and drop. And this is really good approach, because it serves everyone. So we are removing the obstacle for people that have no way to use our application in the way that we intended. The other way around is degrading gracefully. So starting from very the most sophisticated form of our interface, but thinking what can actually fall off. Will it still work if we can't upload multiple images at one time? Will it still work if we can't drag and drop images and we have to press the button to open a folder and attach the file, and so on and so on. Your interface should work without unnecessary elements. And one of my favorite issues that usually causes a lot of problems is thinking about pixel perfection, like as a must-have, as something that has to be done, and everything else has to be sacrificed to provide pixel perfection. Because pixel perfection can be achieved, but it has to be thought through differently. So it usually wastes a lot of time and in many cases impacts accessibility a lot. Working together with designers or having a designer that can code and prototype something usually helps to think about interactions between elements, how they behave on smaller screens, how they behave if something is not working exactly as we wanted, and so on. And thinking mobile first. It's not about designing for mobile, but thinking about the content as a linear set of elements and hierarchy going from top to bottom. Something that can be easily displayed on the screen, on the narrow screen, usually means that it will be also easy to read if you are using a screen reader or if you're digesting this content in a different way on a small screen or some other way. Building from that up is much easier than going from top to bottom, because usually cutting stuff off, we fall into pitfalls where content is not understandable. But starting from the mobile means that usually we can avoid those problems. Next part is content. It is usually overlooked, but it impacts both design and way we develop websites, and is actually very, very important for people, regardless of how we create the whole interface. First thing is we have to be clear, because we don't want to distract user. If it is the e-commerce website, we want this person to purchase whatever they were looking for. So we have to aim to remove all possible obstacles. But think about interfaces like I don't know, our credit application or DBS check or any government website where you have to apply to for something or find some information. People usually then are very anxious, they are nervous, they don't have much time. So just going straight to the point, avoiding distraction helps a lot. Being simple, so people don't read too much. They don't have enough time to read everything. They want to understand the gist of what they have to do, and making things very simple for them helps you really a lot and removes any distractions. So like I said, avoiding distractions. So this usually I address to people working in marketing, because we usually think about any empty space as a place where we can start advertising our products or let people know about other parts of our business and so on. Do we really need it? We have that person there. We just want to help them accomplish their task. Avoiding jargon is also very important. Not everyone is an expert in the area that we are working in. So whether it's a credit company or like I said, any government website or even a very specialized e-commerce website, people usually don't use the same jargon. So if you, for example, have the website that is selling DIY tools, you will treat differently customers if you are selling. If it's a wholesale for people that know their business, they know their tools, they know what they're looking for, they know the jargon, they know the names, types, and everything. But it's completely different if you try to sell similar stuff to people that are basically trying to do some small DIY at home and they don't know anything about type of tools they need. Then even naming your content should be different, the way you structure your content should be different. So instead of for example, showing a category of different drills and letting users just go down into different types, different purposes, and so on, you probably would categorize everything to home improvements, garden, and so on. So avoiding jargon helps definitely a lot. Another thing is providing alternative content. This seems like impacting only just content phase of your project, but how we actually provide this additional content, descriptions, subtitles, transcripts, impacts the way how we design the website, how we develop the website, but also the whole backend. So we need to have this content in database. We have to have the source of this content. I've seen so many situations that someone thought about this, but later there was no one, or there was no source to get this content. So this has to be thought from the very beginning and included in pretty much every part of development. Safety. We were talking at the very beginning about different types of obstacles that people have, auditory, motor, and so on. But one is basically the way that people feel at the moment when they interact with your application. Do they feel safe if they fill your form, they apply for a credit or anything? Are they anxious at the time? I'm thinking about situations where you want to deal, for example, with you are calling police and trying to go through the voice interface, and you are very nervous at the moment. You can't speak properly. You are very distracted. But the same is when you want to buy something where you have to spend a lot of money. The same way you want to apply for the credit is the same when you want to go for DBS check or anything like this. We have to think about how people feel when they interact with our content, and this is clarity, because people don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to feel that they don't know something. We need to help them find information and get their task done. Sometimes safety is not just making stuff smoother, though. It's making this predictable and making people understand what's going on. From physical world, friction probably is the most well-known example of friction is using cash machine. At the very beginning, the common problem were people losing their cards because they were happy, they were taking money, and suddenly they were leaving and the card was inside. So what producers did, if you think about it, right, how it looks like right now, is that you don't get your money before you take your card. So this the whole process, additional step, confirmations. Do you really want to take this amount of money? Are you sure? Then you wait for your card, take your card, and then comes money. And withdrawing a bigger amount of money, usually I'm going to buy somewhere, and you forget about the card. Right now it doesn't happen, but not because we are more cautious, but someone building this interface for us thought about this and prevented this issue. Another issue is creating the interface that requires a lot of learning. And I know that for me as a UI developer, cool, smooth interface is something that I would really love to create. But sometimes we can't afford enough time for people to learn. So it's the different situation when you create a nice interface, let's say in Photoshop or Lightroom, that I will spend a lot of time with and can learn how to operate it. But it's completely different when you have credit application like in NewDay, where person usually interacts with this application once. They don't have time to learn how to use it. They have to know how to use it. And if we make it difficult, too fancy, it's quite likely that they will struggle, that it will cause a lot of issues for them, a lot of issues for us, for example, wrong type of data that we have to validate, and so on and so on. So the good thing is to stick to common patterns, something that is recognizable, simple, and familiar. You don't see many cars with unusual gear shifts or I don't know, ignition located in an unusual place. It's always kind of similar. Even if there are some differences, we all know how to get in the car and start it. So the same is with applications and web interfaces. So it has to be simple, it has to be familiar, unless we're creating something disrupting that will allow user to come back over and over. So you think about Instagram, it changes a lot, but after a while of complaining, a few days of thinking about, oh, what did they do there? Why it's like this right now? You learn. But with applications that are one-off, we can't afford that. And the last thing that I struggle the most in many places is how we are actually testing accessibility. Commonly, people don't have time or think that they don't have time or is a waste of time and resources to test with real users. But even if you approach someone from your company, someone that it's not a developer, they usually know the product, and whatever you test on them will be biased. We can't test stuff ourselves because we will be biased. We can't test, for example, I mean, we can, but it's usually very problematic and causes a lot of issues. We can test using screen readers, but from my experience, person testing this and being still able to see what's in the interface usually makes a tester overlook problems that the person really using only voice would encounter. And this is us creating those problems. And thinking about automated tests, so you run a script that checks or all alts in images are fulfilled. Do we have labels everywhere? Is I don't know, error message connected properly with form field? They can tell us only the most basic and most embarrassing issues. It's exactly like spell checkers in Word. It will tell you if the single word is written properly, but it won't tell you if your sentences make sense and the whole text is understandable and make any sense at all. One other issue is not assuming anything. We always think that, okay, our users always use desktop devices. Our users are young, so we don't need accessibility because, I don't know, we are selling sport equipment, so our customers are, you know, very fit people that have no problems with interface, that are tech savvy, and so on and so on. There's a lot of assumptions like this that are usually, unfortunately, wrong. But how to avoid it? I will tell you a few stories in a moment, but the main takeout from this whole part is that accessibility should be an integral part of the whole process. You have to know that fixing accessibility at the end, when you get bugs that, oh, something is not conveyed through screen reader, or something is conveyed double or it doesn't behave properly, we can fix it in a code to some extent. Sometimes it's very difficult, almost impossible. It will mean that I have to go back to the designer and say, okay, the way it is done, it's going to be very difficult or impossible at all. They have to go back and think about this. Okay, will I get the sign off? Is it in brand or something? It's usually increasing time and the whole effort in fixing a very small issue. If we think about accessibility from the very beginning, do we have the whole content? Do we have the proper design? Is it really easy to implement? We have the prototypes and everything. This actually helps reduce time of working on accessibility. So this is the summary of the whole process. I just wanted to show you that it's not uncommon to have issues. And I will just tell a few stories where it's not exactly accessibility is as targeting a specific groups of people that require help from us, but having very wrong assumptions, and how accessibility is actually slightly different to what we really think it is. One of the projects I used to work with, it was a news service where we thought that people are not using mobiles almost at all, because mobile stats were very low, and people were reading news basically on their desktops, usually before going to work. The yellow panels are the commute times, so going to and back to work. So they were using our website before going to work, at work, and in the evening, mostly on desktop. And business assumption was, okay, our users are not mobile users. We don't need to think about providing mobile interface. They won't read it because no one wants to use it. But the actual outcome was that once we actually built the mobile interface, stats looked completely differently. Commute time peaked on mobile, and during work, people were also using mobile to read news. So the takeout from this is that understanding the stats was wrong. It's not that people don't want to, it was because they were not able to. And this is very, very common mistake, that we think that, okay, no one is using our website in this specific way, so we don't have to care about them. But usually it's very, very wrong. Another example is thinking about users use desktop, so we don't have to think about making our interface a little bit at least responsive, because our clients are, let's say, content people from certain types of companies, let's say banking, and they usually are tied to sitting in front of their desk on desktop, or at least with laptop. But with specific application I worked for, it's not this application here, we realized that users have to copy a lot of data to whatever spreadsheets and other tools they needed. And actually they were using our application on half screen or even less. So even though the basic assumption was right, they use desktop, it doesn't really mean that we don't have to think about providing interface for smaller screens. And the other situation, I have statistics only from Poland, from councils, that up to 40% of people working in councils with desktops Zoom content. So basically, effectively, they're using websites in mobile versions. And the last example was thinking about touch interface. We had very clear idea how our application will be digested, and we know what mobile devices are, how people interact. So if you have a keyboard, probably you don't have a keyboard and mouse, you probably don't have touch. But then came Microsoft with their first touch interface, and suddenly a lot of laptops with touch screens, and suddenly the whole idea that touch happens only on mobile and tablets was completely blown to pieces. So this is, people don't think about this as accessibility, but this is actually integral part of thinking what can happen and thinking about how to target unknown situations, because it will add up. It will change the way we create interfaces. And this is it. Time for questions. Okay, there are a few. I think the first one is Kate Morris. I started testing with voiceover. I'm never really sure what it is supposed to say. Do you have any tips? I have two, actually. Either, I mean, the easiest, the best is to actually hire someone that is actually using voiceover. But if it's not possible, what I'm trying to do usually is to switch the screen off. So I'm not looking at the website. I'm just looking at what voiceover is saying, and not even in if you use, for example, NVIDIA, you see what was conveyed. You can disable voice and just see what was said, and it's also biasing you, because you see what was said before. Person actually hearing that won't have this feedback that, okay, what was said two sentences ago, or what was the previous message. So we need to think about the messages that have to be very comprehensive and explain everything, not just assuming that this person will see or remember what happened half a minute ago in other part of the interface.
I'll take a question. So Alex Whitlock has asked, how do we get product owners and product managers engaged in making products accessible when they're not putting changes required as a priority? I think this is an absolutely fantastic question. It's something that we kind of deal with every single day as developers and as development teams, and not just in accessibility, but in terms of tech debt and all that kind of stuff as well. I think if I want to say we, I mean, if we as developers are the only people that really care about this kind of thing and are really looking to push it, then it does make it a very, very difficult situation, which is, I guess, maybe the situation that you're in at the moment, because it's not, as Yanis was saying in his presentation, accessibility is not something that could be kind of like bolted on as a nice to have at the end. It's not something that you can say, okay, we'll inflate the estimate of this piece of work by 25% and we'll bolt on some accessibility. It's not something that works like this. Ultimately, you want to be in a position where the company is all on the same page and is all kind of thinking in the same mindset. Everybody needs to know the importance of accessibility, and I think a real big way about that is keep shouting about it, and every time business makes decisions that kind of fly in the face of that, then you need to put your hand up and you need to shout about it. And ways that you can do that is ultimately kind of point out to the business that you're throwing money away. If you're not making your products accessible, you are throwing money down the toilet, and it's and sometimes that's what needs to be said to actually kind of give them the shape that they need to pay attention to these things. So, like I say, if you can get some kind of stats from Google Analytics to say, okay, well, we're getting this many users, and we assume based on users' behavior that we're losing this many customers, or we're losing this many interactions or calls to action because people simply can't interact with our software, we're losing X amount of money. And then it is something, again, like Yanis was saying, it's something that needs to be really kind of in the roots of the business, and the business needs to be aligned on the same things that the developers are. And hopefully that kind of answered the question. But I know it's a very difficult one though.
There's another very similar question. Monica asked, what is the best way to get through to stakeholders? How do we sell the value of accessibility in actual numbers? there are a few ways probably to get the numbers, because I think that it's the simplest, we think, way to convince stakeholders that this will actually change the business and affect the way we earn money. But other way I've seen, actually, not only regarding stakeholders but also developers, was picking the test subjects properly and asking people from the team, including stakeholders, to participate in those tests at least once. So observing people actually interacting with the interface. Numbers were convincing, but sometimes it's really hard to convince that those numbers mean what we think we mean, and they really really change the money we earn. But seeing people actually having problems with our interface because we created those problems for them is eye-opening for everyone. And especially stakeholders usually just see, okay, this is really wrong and we have to make it smoother. So participating was for me one of the best ways. Go to the lab, make sure that business analyst or someone from higher levels participates in this at least once, and this will change definitely a lot.
Just to add another little anecdote as well to this, my previous role, I was working for quite a large international bank, and accessibility was something they took into account to some extent, but it was somewhat of an afterthought. And then all of a sudden there was a release went out into production for one of our mobile apps, and it turned out that release basically broke the app for a huge number of customers who could no longer, with particular needs, that could no longer use the app, and they were dragged through a hedge backwards by the press, and the press really got on top of them. So as a knee-jerk reaction to that, the stance on accessibility really changed, and they really pulled the bootstraps up, and everything changed. So sometimes it does take a big event like that to cause a bit of change, but yeah, I just thought I'd drop that in there.
Another good question is Alison asking, how do you test authentically? Do you recruit users with disabilities or do you use other methods? So ideally I would, and in a few projects we really did that, but it's not the only thing, because it's not about just finding someone not being able to see, but the most important is also think is if it's really the person that would use your interface. Is it really the part of your target group? Because I'm not sure how to describe it properly, but recruiting an older person, for example, to test websites selling, I don't know, windsurfing equipment would be okay, but it's also a matter that is this person really interested in what they're doing, right? Because you can ask someone to go through the interface, and they will, but they will act differently than a person that actually wants to go through this process. So recruiting people is difficult. Finding the accurate group is difficult. I mean, it's never really accurate. It's never absolutely comprehensive. But the better we are in finding the right target, the better the outcome be. There was another question about Natasha. Shouldn't the learning curve be shortened as much as possible, as this means that people with memory issues will never get to know how to interact with the app and will always have trouble using it, finding the way around, etc. Yes, definitely. And if you think about, let's say, applications to quickly edit a movie, because with applications like ours, it's clear it has to be, it's a one-off applications, right? But compare iMovie and Adobe Premiere. One is very simple for people that interact with this once in a while. They want to do it once, they want to do this once, and they have to learn, not learn anything, just do it, find everything easily. But if you want to target people that work with software constantly, it's completely different way. So yes, curve should not be very steep, but sometimes there are situations that we have no choice. But if we can, we should reduce this learning time.
I'll pick one up from Katie Morris. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the Scala Play framework at all. Sorry, the question is, we work with frameworks like the Scala Play framework, which auto generates HTML but isn't accessible and impossible to change, in particular redundant tables. Any tips? I'm not familiar with that framework myself. I'm not sure, Yanis, if you've had any experience with that at all. But it sounds, yeah, if you're gaming for accessibility, or if you're aiming for accessibility, then maybe it might be a technology choice if it is so rigid that you can't actually make that accessible.
I would say that sometimes if we can't do much, it's the situation that we have to think about maybe slightly different design, maybe design choice, maybe content choice will improve accessibility. There is no silver bullet. Like I said in one of the first slides, it always depends. So there's one question about data about touch screens on desktops. So I don't have actually the current data, but couple 3-4 years ago maybe we were checking offices both in England and for different company in Poland, because we started having issues with the way we were detecting touch and addressing, so like creating bigger elements or relying on hover and so on, that in some cases there were over half of laptops in some offices were having touchscreen. Not that people were using it, but they were touch enabled, and because they're getting quite cheap, so it's sometimes even hard to find one without. And our issue is not exactly enabling something for people using this device, but the way how we create an interface had to change, because we couldn't rely on detecting some features and making good choices what to do if there is mouse, because some people can actually use their finger to open the menu or so on.
I can pick one, and Yanis, you might need to kind of support me a little bit on this one, just so to make sure I'm not kind of stepping afoul with you being the expert. But Emma Richens has asked, what are the top 3 things you would recommend devs new to accessibility should always keep in mind? And I think a big tip would be less is more. If you keep your pages as simple as possible, then they're going to be more accessible to more people. A really good tip that I think is also kind of worth it, and it's something that I've used previously. You can test your things if you do a search for your web page, for instance, that you're creating, and you look at the cache version within the Google search results. You can have a look at the text only version of that. So if you fire up the text only version and you can actually read through and understand the content of that page, I think that's a really good stepping stone in the right direction if you can do that. And make sure that you're using semantic elements as well. I'd say that's another one. And again, a very basic building block. We do have access to things like ARIA labels and ARIA tags, which kind of, it does give us some abilities, but I think if you can try and construct your page to be accessible without using those, then I think you're doing a much better job.
Yeah. Probably I would part of those tips will be the same. One another from me is actually try to observe any person interacting with your interface. It's a common problem for pretty much every creator that at some point you get attached to what you're doing, and you won't see problems that other people see, because we know the project duct, we know the interface, we know the code. We don't see those issues. So seeing someone actually using it, it's eye-opening. It's something completely changing the way of viewing the interface. The other one, did I have another one? No, I think that's it. My turn or you, Fraser?
Is there one that you've seen that you want to pick out? Because I'm happy to take another one. So there's a question here that's just popped up from Alberto Pedrero. Apologies if I've mispronounced your name there. Do you think accessibility should be mandatory at university? Many people don't know anything about it. Maybe they could make aware of the problem. It's a tough one, and I guess it depends on the course. If it's a course on specifically web development, for instance, obviously this is the kind of domain that we're involved in here. It's a very tough question, to be honest with you. I don't know about kind of legally mandatory, but I think it's something that universities should offer in their courses, and I think it would make those courses much more robust in terms of preparing a student for moving into a career. So I think it would be a very good idea for universities to do that. I think one of the big issues with university when it comes to teaching programming in general, and specifically for the web, is it's such a fast moving industry. So if you kind of imagine to build a 3-year university course, it might take a university 3 years to actually put that together. So say we're 2020 at the moment. So if a university course is being devised, it might take 3 years to put a full 3-year course together, which means that you're not going to get people onto that course until 2023, which means that the knowledge that people have when they graduate in 2026 or 2027 is going to be based on knowledge and skills from 2020, which is a 7-year time frame effectively, or a 6-year time frame before people actually get out into the wild and start using stuff. And I think that's one of the issues that universities have in terms of putting together proper curriculums when it comes to things like web, and when it comes to things such as programming. And accessibility is a relatively, when I say relatively new, it's only something that's really kind of come to the forefront in the last few years. So I think that's potentially why there's not a lot of content on it in universities at the moment. And I very much hope that going forward, we will see that universities start to include that content in those courses.
I missed this question. Where is this? Oh. Mohammed Rafi asks, how important is it to support workflow without JS for web apps? This is a tough question, actually. Because if it was up to me, I would say as much as possible. If something doesn't have to be complex app, don't make it a complex app. Very simple interfaces can easily do without JavaScript or with layer of JavaScript enhancing this interface. But there is an issue that sometimes those apps are part of bigger projects, and it's just, we use React or whatever other framework may be, and it's really hard to get out of this habit of just using single page applications for everything. But even if we don't rely on, we don't tackle not having JavaScript, it's really good practice to help users that want to use it as a page or something. I think about overusing buttons or clickable divs here and there, and we can't open an element in the new tab or something like this. So make it behave like a website helps significantly. But if you don't have to use JavaScript, I would say don't. But it's hard to push through.
Yeah, I think like Yanis was saying in the presentation as well, progressive enhancement is the way to go. So if you can convey your information, if you convey your products using the lowest common denominator of pure HTML, even without CSS or without any styling whatsoever, then do that and then build on it again progressively, so that you have that very basic workflow, and you have that very basic interaction, so anybody can interact with that. And then for the people that have CSS and are able to view CSS, then give them CSS. And for the people that have JavaScript turned on and they want a fancier user experience, give them the fancy bells and whistles as well. But it just means that the people that don't have those, you're not taking anything away from those people. Those people are still able to interact with your product, or still able to read the information that you're presenting.
And there's a massive debate because very rarely people actually disable JavaScript or are unable to use it at all. Is where it's the issue of circumstances that script is not loaded. There has to be some content so that they can digest. If the script doesn't load, or they have very slow connection, you're on tube and you can't load content or something. So it's nice to think about those worst case scenarios where your JavaScript may not be relied on. It's difficult to convince stakeholders and developers sometimes.
Can I just jump in, guys? Got
Of course.
4 minutes left or so, so maybe time for one more question. And then any that we didn't get to, we'll try and get to offline, I guess.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess Taja, you've asked a question there. So though content isn't always classed as an important element of accessibility, what should be the most common features that should be considered to make all content accessible? And there's been a lot of feedback on that. I don't know, Yanis, if there's anything that you can see specifically that you might want to add to that. So the Heather Hepburn has very kindly jumped in and given some tips and advice there. So copy is easy to understand. Text is broken up into readable sections. Chunks of text are left aligned. Alt text exists on non-decorative images. Heading structure is defined, and that's H1 to H6. Field labels, hint text, and error messages sit next to the field. No placeholder text is used within fields except on search fields. Links and calls to action are descriptive and unique, and elements are correctly labeled for screen readers. Is there anything that Yanis, you can think that you might want to add?
I would just say that for me, content is a king always. So I care less about how page is looking. I mean, it has to be aesthetic because it adds to accessibility, right? Aesthetics and cleanliness, but content is always the most important thing. So I would argue that we should try to save the content as a key element, but if we can't, because sometimes we have to deal with limited content. We don't have source for this content, don't have time, so okay, I can understand this, but then we have to think about design, enhancing what we have, making sure that it's not broken, so all alt text, all the semantics is there, placeholders and so on and so on. But if we can make content the key element, we should.
Great. Thank you both. I think we're just about coming up on time. So any questions that we didn't get a chance to answer today, sorry for anyone that asked them and we didn't get a chance to get to them. I'll take a look, and if I can answer them maybe via the Accessibility London Twitter account, then I will do that. So keep an eye out on that. Thank you so much to Fraser and Yanis for your time, and Harriet from eSynergy for helping us set up tonight. Tara from MyClearText for the amazing captions. Yeah, really appreciate it. It's been really enjoyable to see the chat scrolling so quickly with lots of messages, you know, from where everyone is in the world, lots of great discussion going on. So I'll probably spend the rest of my evening scrolling back through that and trying to take it all in. But I hope you enjoyed tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. You know, enjoy the rest of this year if you can, the festive period. We'll probably be back in early 2021. We don't have a date set yet, but I hope we'll be back sort of February time. Who knows? Hopefully soon we'll be able to be back in person, but you know, we'll just have to play that one by ear. But thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks all.